our next guest in the show, who is an alumni of the Women's Leadership Challenge, Olivia came into the program and she had just started her own political consulting firm. And that was about a year ago. And I was so delighted to see her expand her firm to consult with multiple candidates in competitive districts, start to hire under her. I'm amazed and impressed by her, as I know you will be. A little bit more about her. She's a seasoned strategist. She combines her experience, vast experience in political campaigns and nonprofits to provide outstanding consultation to her clients, which is mostly on fundraising, on voter outreach, on messaging, on all these different things it takes to run a campaign. She's a veteran of all different campaigns all over the country. She's worked alongside many influential policymakers, political strategists, and thought leaders to successfully execute grassroots and grasstops campaigns, and has been instrumental in raising millions of dollars for candidates, PACs, and other orgs throughout the country. As a former campaign and nonprofit professional, Olivia understands and relates to the very fast-paced political environment and is committed to going the extra mile to support her clients' needs. She graduated with a degree in psychology of human behavior and a minor in poli-sci and sociology from the University of the Ozarks in Clarksville, Arkansas. Olivia, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Excited to see you. So, based on what you've heard so far, anything that you felt like these are two of your candidates that you've been supporting? Anything you feel like either of them left out that you think is incredibly important to highlight about either of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they both spoke eloquently about themselves, their election, and the challenges of that they're running up against in their districts. I think the biggest challenge right now for everyone that's running is we're in the midterms, and then next year we're in the off election year. So it's going to be important to focus on that voter turnout and building out the infrastructure needed to be successful in these elections.
Olivia, what's the name of your business now? It's Logan Strategies, right?
Logan Strategic Solutions. Logan
Strategic Solutions. Okay. So let's take, and Olivia has new puppies, which is, I'm sure, who's making noise right now. She is a dog lover, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Dog mom. So I want to get some intel on you on the Senate seats. So we saw that that map earlier. Zach, if you are able to bring that back up. If not, we saw that some of the that the Georgia Senate race, where Raphael Warnock is running against Herschel Walker, former NFL player who also paid for an abortion and claims to be running on an anti-choice stance. I guess he just will pay for them, but doesn't think women should get them. He is running against, so he is also a former NFL player. And Raphael Warnock is one of the ones that I talked about in terms of, being part of the blue wave in Georgia. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on where Warnock stands and in this election.
I want to be cautiously optimistic, but I mean, we've seen in other states like Alabama, when they pull people from the NFL and football because it's a whole different separate culture in the South, how that works in elections. I would love to see him get reelected. I don't know how it's going to go. I feel like the right people are rallying on Warnock's behalf. But I mean, Georgia's a tricky state. And they also just went through redistricting. So it's going to be close, but I feel cautiously optimistic.
And what do you think? What issues matter most to Georgia voters? Are they the ones that I've highlighted so far, or what's?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of concern around inflation and job creation, healthcare, education, like our bread and butter issues that are not being paid attention to by other elected officials that are currently in office.
So let's actually go that way for a second. Why does everybody think that Republicans are better at the economy?
So I think it's a messaging thing. I think Democrats have really struggled to formulate a message around the economy that is strong, and Republicans have dominated this for a decade or more even. And a lot of times their policies, they put strangleholds on small business owners and people that want to just be independent and self-employed, and they legislate more towards supporting corporations, and they don't think about people who need an affordable living wage. They don't think about people who struggle to afford their health care or have a family of 4 and have 2 working parents and can't make ends meet, or they are barely making ends meet. And so I think we need to start messaging around that. Like some people have started messaging around that, but it's not strong enough. It's not loud enough.
And I think it's important to point out that, that Republicans are really about less taxes for the rich and hoping that less taxes for the rich have a trickle down effect.
But we have not seen that.
There is no trickle down effect.
There is. People just want to consolidate their own wealth, right, and hold it for themselves.
I'll never forget when one of my I have to say a shout out to Michael Hammond, my dad's golf buddy, and he said, Sam, this was the election between Hillary and Trump. He said, I'm voting for Hillary. He goes, I don't really want to. I don't like her. He said, but ultimately, Trump is a scumbag. And if you vote for Trump, all you care about is making your moat even bigger. And he's like, that is what it comes down to. Do you want to be richer? Do you care about social issues more, or do you want to be a richer person? And that's about higher. It's tax cuts among the wealthy. It's not actually being better within the economy. And the fact that inflation has to do a lot with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which is beyond our control, with the COVID-19 pandemic, and also that oil and large corporations are making more profits. And if anything, we need to tax corporations, we need to tax the rich, and we need to tax oil companies and reduce their profits so it will be less for ours. And that's what Democrats are advocating for.
Yeah. And I mean, my thing is get these top 1%ers paying their fair share. Because even if they did that, it would be better than what we're doing now.
Yeah, I have a friend who is founder of a tech company, and he said, I'm the only rich guy that's he's a Democrat going, please take more of my money. He's like, how much money can you possibly need? This company is valued in the hundreds of millions. Why do I need all this money? Please take it.
So this brings up something really interesting. In 2014, I had just graduated college, and I was working on my first campaign, and I was part of the coordinated, so we were dabbling in a little bit of everything. So the main priority was to try to protect the Senate seat in Arkansas. And then we also were trying to pass a minimum wage increase on the ballot. And we did. And they have actually passed 2 more since then, I believe. At least 1. But I'm pretty sure there's been 2. And I was going around the mall asking people to sign the petition. And I didn't want to walk up to this guy because he looked very Republican and he was dressed in high fashion, had a Rolex. And he saw me getting these people to sign, and he walked up to me and he's like, what's that for? And I was like, well, it's a petition to increase the minimum wage. We would do it in moderation. So I don't know, how do you feel about that? He's like, oh my gosh, I make almost $3 million an hour running this Fortune 500 company, and my employees can't even barely afford, I want to give them more money. This would be fantastic. And he signed it. And I was like, man, I prejudged this guy based on what he looked like. And he's actually on our side.
There are some people that have souls.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, he was dripping with wealth. And I just was like, oh no, I'm not talking to this person. Be one of those people that wants to consolidate it and keep it for himself.
And that's our lesson too, right? As Democrats, is that we can't just like me and the guy walking into the Hillary's office being like, is that guy the wrong place? Like, we can't make assumptions either, right? And we have to really, I think, get those people as advocates and pioneers. And I was joking with my dad that he should start Golfers Against Trump. I was like, Dad, come on, like, start a boycott of all the Trump courses. You can start a Facebook group. My dad doesn't even know how to use Facebook, but I thought it would have been good. But like, in terms of the economy, 16 years under Clinton and Obama, 33.8 million jobs were created. 18 months under Biden, 9.6 million jobs were created. And 16 years under Bush and Trump, 1.9 million jobs were created. So basically 5 times as many Biden jobs as the last 3 GOP people combined. So, the jobs growth is much higher under Democrats. It's not higher under Republicans at all.
Right.
So I just don't understand that people think that the Republicans are better at the economy.
I honestly, as I said earlier, I think it's a messaging thing. Like, we have to step up to the plate and make our messaging more concise around the economy. I think the last person that ever really did that well was, Obama did a good job of like vocalizing it. I'm not so sure that he had the House or the Senate to back him to actually get it done the way that it should have been done. And then Bill Clinton.
Right? Like I said at the beginning of the show, right?
Yeah.
So just so people know, Democrats decreased federal spending by $550 billion and reduced our deficit by $1.4 trillion in 2022, which was the biggest single-year drop in the deficit in American history. So, again, if you're concerned about the economy and you're thinking about the economy, you need to vote for Democrats unless you're making billions of dollars and you want tax cuts. I can't, it's true, like, Republicans support taxes for the rich. I can't say, but the fact is, like, do you really need, do you need to make your moat any bigger? Like, how many houses do you need? How many boats do you need?
Yeah.
So let's move on. Yeah, go ahead.
I had an interesting conversation with a former Republican a couple days ago, and she's like, it's amazing how much it's changed. Like, the party has changed. Like, it used to be we had a fundamental disagreement about how tax dollars are spent, but now we're like disagreeing on who qualifies to be a person with full rights in this country. Maybe a segue for the next topic.
Speaking of fiscal conservatism again, like, beyond kids being born that then end up on the welfare system, the other irony is that Republicans waste so much time and money and energy doing things like transgender bans and regulating abortion. It's like, we have serious problems in this country. Like, our education system sucks. It's terrible. We have massive amounts of poverty. There's a lot of things that need to be done in this country, and you're spending your attention trying to make sure that someone who's transgender can or can't use the bathroom or play women's sports. Like, go deal with real issues. It's such bullshit.
Yeah, well, and it's amazing, like, as long as I've been involved in politics and I've listened to my parents and grandparents talk about politics, the issues haven't changed, but society keeps evolving. And they're not ready for that evolution because they can't even deal with the issues of the past.
That's interesting. Now, what about the Pennsylvania race? John Fetterman there is standing, a Democratic candidate, is standing off against Dr. Oz, who apparently you were saying doesn't even live in the district. So can you talk a little bit about how Fetterman stands and, what issues are at stake in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so I've been keeping up with this race because I have family that live in Philadelphia. I also was in Pennsylvania for 2016 for Hillary. And Fetterman was actually, at the time, he ran in a primary against Katie McGinty for the Senate. And Katie got the nomination, but then he ran for lieutenant governor, won, and now he's running for governor, Senate, my bad. He is running for Senate. And Dr. Oz threw his hat in the ring, and he technically lives in the Philadelphia suburbs of New Jersey. So he's not even in the state of Pennsylvania. And then recently he's had some scandals come out about his scientific research studies that he ran that involved testing on puppies that were not ethical. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes things up. Pennsylvania is a pretty purple state. You pretty much have Harrisburg, which is the capital, then you have Philadelphia, and then you have Pittsburgh, and then everything in between is Pennsylvania, and it's very for the most part, pretty conservative or moderate. So I'm really interested to see how things shake out. I feel cautiously optimistic about Fetterman. I think it is a challenge for somebody who doesn't even live in the state that they want to represent to get the nomination. We'll just see how the voters feel about that, though.
So another one of your candidates, Kate Turner in Kentucky, is running with a pro-choice messaging, but not the kind of pro-choice messaging you might think. So I wonder if you could dive a little bit into, it seems unheard of to run on pro-choice in Kentucky. How is she messaging that? What's going on there?
So her big thing is right now, because she's in her mid-30s, but she also is a consultant, works for herself, highly accomplished. She wants to put off having a family for right now. And so she wants to undergo, she's undergone IVF in another state because of concerns around the way that the abortion ban in Kentucky is messaged. It's very ambiguous and potentially impacts people's ability to have and plan families. And that is another choice outside of abortion that falls under that umbrella. And a lot of people also don't understand the process of IVF and how that is impacted under the abortion ban. And when she goes door to door, or
Olivia, can you explain the signs? How is that impacted under the abortion ban?
So a lot of times in IVF, you're selecting the best embryo to work with. And so at that time, you're picking who's viable and who's not. So at that time, are you killing a baby at that, if you're choosing a different embryo versus, And so the law doesn't explicitly say that IVF is banned, but I think in a gray space, if a doctor felt uncomfortable, they'd be like, hey, we can't do this. We can't, it's not safe for us to be able to do this. And so I think that message is really hitting home to families that want to expand, but can't right now. And so they want to make and plan other options, and they may not be able to do that in the state of Kentucky or other states that have other bans as well. And so she's really done a good job of campaigning on this issue and making it universal. And both Democrats, Republicans, and independents have responded really well to her.
That's fantastic to see that people are responding well to that. Let's go with another candidate. Jessica Katzenmeier is running for Wisconsin State Senate, District 5. If elected, she would be the first openly transgender woman to hold the seat. What's most important about her race?
Yeah, so Wisconsin also had a trigger ban go into effect. They have a Democratic governor, but they need a state legislature that can back his veto of the abortion ban there. And so her seat is one of the targeted seats to protect the governor's veto so that they no longer have an abortion ban.
So basically, essentially, the governor's vetoes this, terrible abortion ban, and we need those seats as Democrats to protect that veto.
Yes.
Okay. Well, lastly, what about January 6th? We had these January 6th committee hearings where I think it became incredibly clear that Trump is the architect behind the insurrection, and was recently indicted. Let's see if he actually decides to. Was he indicted or he was subpoenaed? Excuse me, he was subpoenaed.
He was subpoenaed, yeah.
He was subpoenaed. Let's see if he actually talks, because he will incriminate himself, so I hope he does. But do you think that, and then the other aspect of that is that we have a lot of people running for election on the Republican side who deny the election and say that, believe in the great lie, which was the whole reason that the insurrection happened in the first place, was Donald Trump saying this is an illegitimate election. You can't confirm Biden. He's not the real president. I'm the real president. Do you think people are voting at all based upon the January 6 hearings, or, how much has that impacted swing voters?
So it was really interesting at the start of the election cycle. It was a really hot topic. And it does come up. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it's definitely, a lot of people have shifted, of course, to the economic concerns. But I do think that there is a certain constituency that is still paying attention to the January 6th hearings. And I actually think it's more of the election deniers, more so than the ones that actually believe the results of the election. It definitely, I think there will be some people that turn out and vote because they do not, they feel one way or the other about January 6th.
But when you say election deniers are paying more attention, in what way?
So I think a lot of the media that they consume, because there is no substance on that side of the aisle right now as far as what these elected officials and candidates are running on. They get fed with January 6th, the election was rigged, and they go off of what they hear. I think that type of brainwashing can be very difficult to overcome. So we'll see how that goes this cycle.
Yeah, I really wish that YouTube and Facebook and tech companies would take accountability for the fact that, they send people down to rabbit holes, that you click on one thing saying the election is rigged, and the next video you're fed, frankly, should be why the election was not rigged. But they want you to click on it. And if you see why the election was not rigged, that's not what you want to hear. You want confirmation bias from what you already believe. So they send you further and further down these rabbit holes of conspiracy theorists. It's like, starting at light, and then all of a sudden you're in QAnon. So, I really wish, that tech companies would take responsibility and say, and even for Democrats, you know what, fine, show me a Fox News clip after I read MSNBC. I would love to see
it.
I want to hear alternative viewpoints as well. And yet we are in these, this information bubble that just, you start here and you end up here. And especially as we defriend, relatives and friends who are not the same political views as us from Facebook and whatever, or Twitter, then we hear even less, and we're in our own echo chambers.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I've gotten to the point, I used to be on social media all the time in junior high and high school. And then after my first, 2 or 3 elections, I got social media fatigue because of all the information or disinformation that gets spread through these channels. And there was one point in time, I don't know if Twitter is still doing this, but someone would post something that was extremely biased, and then they would have a notation at the bottom of the tweet or the image or whatever that would highlight that this is embellished. Here's the truth. And I would be okay with that if more platforms would also highlight that, okay, we're taking this to the nth degree versus actually sharing real viable information.
Right. So, because this has been a really long show, I want to go towards your business. What types of clients do you serve? What services do you provide?
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about Logan Strategic Consulting.
Solutions. Yeah.
Logan Strategic Solutions, which was a at birth when I had you in my class. So
Yeah.
tell us about the types of clients you serve. Obviously, these two women on the show are examples, and what kind of services you provide.
So right now, like in the past, I have done all levels of government from the federal all the way down to local. And then I've also done PACs and organizations. But right now, my main focus is actually the state ledge, especially since we're watching a lot of federal legislation and legislation from the Supreme Court kick things back to the states. It's going to be really crucial for us to pick up the state ledges. And I have been working in politics for almost 14 years now, roughly. And over and over and over again, I hear Democrats talking about how, oh, we need to build a bench, but no one's actually proactively building a bench. And then there are certain organizations that come in and try to do it, but they don't have either the capacity or the experience. And so they really need the support to be able to do that. And so
can you explain to people if they don't understand what does building a bench mean?
Yeah. So when I talk about building a bench, the Republicans did this in the early 2000s. They went in and particularly the Koch brothers and bought school board seats. And then they worked their way up from the school board and went to like municipalities. So your mayoral and city council offices. Then they went to the state ledge. And then they went to statewide offices, and then they took the federal offices. And they did it, they played the long game and organized everything from that very, very grassroots level and just went all the way to the top. We have a tendency to go for the glamour campaigns. So like anyone that gets on MSNBC or CNN and delivers political platitudes that we love hearing, but they can't actually act on it. And we're just like, yeah, we're going to support this person and give them all the money. And it's like, well, follow what they've actually done and been able to do. And then we forget about everything else under that level of government. And that's why we're struggling. And that's why we've fallen behind in so many other states. And that's why certain states that used to be purple are now like being deemed red. But really, we need to get back to the fundamentals of organizing at the grassroots.
Yeah. I'm reading this book, How Change Happens, by I think it's Leslie Crutchfield. And she talks basically about how all successful movements, they start at the state level. They don't start at the top. They start local, grassroots. They have, organizers that are organizing not just in election years, but all the time. And that makes such a difference. And, that the movements that just try to target the top they're not sustainable. They don't have the impact and she talks about gun control as being one of them, that they haven't focused on a state by state strategy, whereas the NRA has really, really strong state chapters that are, pivotal to the NRA winning the big wins. And, I think building the bench and your work. So you mostly, when you say you work with down ballot candidates, you're talking about state house, you're talking about state senate. Is that correct?
So I do predominantly state house and state senate, but then I will also work with mayoral and city council and school board races as well. Eventually I'll go back to the statewides and the federals, but right now it's so important to focus on these races.
And what services do you provide, Olivia?
So predominantly I focus on the fundraising piece, especially this early in the 2023 cycle. I do also do general consulting though. So I can develop field plans and voter outreach plans. We also do communications plans. I have a network of people that I can connect other candidates to for digital services. Let's see, what else? I mean, that's pretty much it. I am going to start doing candidate trainings outside of actually providing services for people that may or may not be able to afford having direct service. So they can come in and join training sessions at a lower cost. I know what's unique about the work that I'm about to do in Virginia is I'm working through an organization called Commonwealth Forward, and they are having me work with their endorsed candidates. And so it helps other candidates that wouldn't be able to afford me off the bat to be able to have the kind of service to run an effective campaign. And so essentially Commonwealth Forward pays me to work with them. That's not always the case in other states. Some states will also have the House or Senate caucuses provide support. And so they'll pay for it as an in-kind and it'll come from the House or Senate caucus. But I mean, a lot of these states are not that organized. You usually find that in the more purple states. Everywhere else, it's kind of just hit or miss whether or not candidates have the right support.
How can people contact you if they're interested in your services?
Yeah, so my email is Olivia at logan-strategies.com. We are working on getting the website up and running, but it will be www.logan-strategies.com. And I will announce it on all my social media platforms once it is up and running.
Awesome, Olivia. Lastly, if you could tell people, a little bit about your experience with the Women's Leadership Challenge, especially as to how it helped you grow your business, that would be.
Yeah, definitely. So it was really funny. I actually found you through a mutual friend who we did campaign work together. And I watched your podcasts that were conveniently on right now. And then I was like, okay, I need to know more about this.
And now you're a guest. Look at this.
Now I'm a guest. Yeah. And so I clicked on your Facebook and I saw the Women's Leadership Challenge and I was like, I'm just starting my business. I mean, this might be worth it. I mean, the podcast was good. Obviously, the training will be good. So I filled out the form and then we had a phone call. And then I was like, all right, I'm in. And it was super helpful in terms of being able to make the decision. I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants before. And I did have business partners and it gave me like the guidance to be able to separate from that, effectively start another business, and then grow it and actually feel confident in growing it. And then not to mention, like, we have a supportive network of women and just that have been wonderful. And it's also nice to be able to connect with them outside of the leadership challenge and talk one-on-one. I don't know. I mean, it's just it's so hard to find supportive women leadership organizations. And I think that's why a lot of women don't go into business, or they find it really difficult to figure out where to start because they don't have an opportunity like this to be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Olivia. And Olivia's in the extension mastermind, leadership mastermind that we have as an option when people finish the program. Olivia, I really want to thank you so much for coming on Samantha Politics tonight. Delighted to have you as a guest. You're such a savvy political strategist, and it's really cool to see these women and hear from them that you have supported to run. So I wish you the best on November 8th with all of your candidates, who I know are all in a very competitive district, and you've worked really, really hard to elect them. So fingers crossed. If you are interested in running for office, you are running for office, you need help with fundraising, you need help with strategy, you need help with field, contact Olivia. She is the best. She really, really, really is terrific. So Olivia, thank you so much for coming on Samantha Politics.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great night. November 8th is coming up. As people said, this is the last stretch. Donate, 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 volunteer, go knock on doors. If you are a Democrat, go to democrats.org to sign up and to see volunteer opportunities. Knocking on doors really, really does work. And this last stretch really makes the last bit of difference. And go beyond those people that you see on MSNBC, on CNN, on Fox. Go to those local candidates. You could tell, hearing from Susanna, they really need our support, but they're often overshadowed by congressional races, which get more of the money and the glamour and the PR. But yet, as Olivia was saying, building that bench is so important, because the state senators become the congresspersons, become the senators, become the vice presidential nominees. It really is a line. Even school level PTO is a breeding ground for future congresspersons, for future senators, for future attorneys generals of a state. So, really volunteer for those local candidates. If you're somebody that says, I don't do politics, well, I go to my friend Michael Sani, who runs something called Bite the Ballot in the UK. And he says, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. Politics is embedded in all of our lives. We cannot ignore it. It affects whether you get your bill paid for when you go to the hospital. It affects whether you have clean water or clean air. It affects your job opportunities. It affects your, being able to get an abortion. It affects your education. It affects sex education. I mean, there's so many things that politics does affect within your lives, and yet people seem to know more about fantasy football or sports statistics than they do about their congressperson. So also get educated before you vote. Do your research, figure out what's going on, see if you can vote early. A lot of places now have voting early, so you can go in and vote early before the election. But do not miss these elections on November 8th. If you liked this episode, please share it with your social media on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I don't care. Whatever you're on, TikTok, please share this episode. We are also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe to us and give us that 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple, so that people can find us and are able to hear this content and coverage. There's a lot of right-wing YouTubers out there, especially women. That's part of why I started this show, because there were very few on the left that were covering politics that are women on YouTube. And I need your help to get these voices out there. I cannot do this alone. So I'm asking you to help me and to help these amazing women running for office. Lastly, you can really show your support by becoming a member on Patreon. It's patreon.com/SamanthaRoPolitics, SAMANTHRO, and then the word politics, for as little as $3 a month to support our production costs, to support all of the time and research and energy that goes into producing this show. I also want to thank Zach at Stream Inspectors. Every time I say, hey, Zach, can you put up that slide? Zach has been doing this show with me for 2 years. Stream Inspectors are the leaders in live stream production. If you want a really cool show like this, look up Stream Inspectors. Maybe you can even get me to come host it for you. Depends on the topic, but we can work that out. But look up Stream Inspectors. I think that's it for tonight. I'm excited to see what happens on November 8th, and we'll see you on the next episode of Samantha Politics. Thanks again for listening, and good night.